The child's cries echoed through the dense forest, lost and alone. Then, from the shadows, a lone German shepherd emerged, his amber eyes locked on the danger ahead. The hunt had begun. The sun had long since dipped below the horizon, leaving behind only a dim glow that barely touched the treetops. The forest, dense and endless, stretched in every direction, a maze of towering pines and winding trails. The silence was eerie, broken only by the occasional rustling of unseen creatures. It was the kind of place where getting lost meant more than just confusion, it meant danger. And in the middle of it all was Noah. Noah was only 6 years old, his small frame trembling as he huddled beneath the gnarled roots of an ancient oak tree. He had wandered too far. One moment, he had been chasing butterflies at the edge of the hiking trail, his mother's laughter in the distance. The next, the woods had swallowed him whole. The trail was gone. The sky above was swallowed by thick, intertwining branches. The air smelled damp, heavy with pine and earth, but the most terrifying thing was the quiet. His little voice had called out, first timid, then frantic, but no one answered. His cries faded into the trees, swallowed by the wilderness. He had tried retracing his steps, his small shoes crunching through fallen leaves, but every path looked the same. Now, as darkness crept in, his stomach ached with hunger, and his tiny hands were scraped from stumbling. Tears slipped down his cheeks, but he stifled his sobs. Something inside him told him to stay quiet. And then there was a sound. At first, it was distant, just the faintest whisper of movement. Then it became clearer. The rustling of undergrowth, twigs snapping under heavy footfalls. Something was coming. Noah's breath hitched, his heart hammering against his ribs. He curled in on himself, squeezing his eyes shut, hoping, praying that whatever it was would pass him by. Then the rustling stopped. A soft huff of breath, warm and steady. A presence. Slowly, Noah opened his eyes and found himself staring into the glowing amber gaze of a German shepherd. Though a protector in the night, Rex had been searching for hours. The scent was faint, but distinct. Fear, exhaustion, the lingering trace of vanilla, likely from the child's clothes. It had taken him deeper into the woods than he had ever gone before, but he didn't hesitate. His paws moved with quiet precision over the rough terrain, his keen nose guiding him forward. Every instinct in his body screamed urgency. Rex was no ordinary dog. He was trained for moments like this. He had spent years learning to track, to protect, to fight if needed. But beyond training, beyond commands, was something deeper. A connection. A purpose. He had been rescued once, a scrawny pup with nothing in the world, taken in by Ethan Carter, a man who had given him more than a home. Ethan had taught him loyalty, courage, and most of all, love. And in return, Rex had given him everything. Ethan was a retired search and rescue officer, a man who had dedicated his life to finding the lost and bringing them home. Rex had been his partner in the field for years, saving countless lives together. But after an injury had forced Ethan into early retirement, Rex had been left restless. The world outside still needed him. And tonight, so did Noah. Rex stepped closer, his nose brushing against the boy's trembling hands. Noah flinched at first, his wide, teary eyes searching the dog's face for any sign of danger. But there was none. Only warmth, patience, and something that made the fear in his chest loosen just a little. A protector. Rex let out a low, reassuring whine, his tail giving the smallest wag. Noah hiccuped, then sniffled, his fingers curling into the thick fur around Rex's neck. "You found me," the little boy whispered. Rex huffed again, pressing his forehead against the child's. Yes, and he wasn't going to leave him. But danger was near. Rex's ears twitched, his body tensing. There it was again. Another sound, just beyond the trees. Not footsteps, not a lost hiker. Something else. Something that didn't belong. The scent reached him next, Musky, sharp, predatory. Coyotes, not just one. A pack. Noah whimpered as Rex moved in front of him, his stance shifting from gentle guardian to fierce defender. His lips curled back, revealing sharp teeth, and a low growl rumbled deep in his throat. The hunt wasn't over. It was just beginning. The bond forged in shadows. Back at the cabin, Ethan paced the floor, his gut twisting with unease. The boy had been missing for hours, and every second that passed made his anxiety grow. He had seen too many tragedies in his years of search and rescue, too many nights where the woods claimed what was lost. But this time, Rex was out there. If there was one being on Earth that could find that child, it was his dog. Ethan ran a hand through his graying hair, stepping onto the porch. The forest loomed beyond, its darkness a wall of uncertainty. "Come on, Rex," he muttered. "Find him." But the night was alive with predators, and Rex knew it. His eyes never left the shifting darkness between the trees. He could hear them now, paws rustling against dry leaves, the occasional snap of a branch beneath careful steps. The coyotes were circling, testing the air, aware that something had invaded their territory. Noah pressed himself closer to Rex, his small hands gripping the thick fur at his shoulders. "What is it?" he whispered, though the answer came in the form of a chilling sound. A howl. It echoed through the trees, sending a shiver down Noah's spine. More followed, weaving into the night air like a sinister melody. They were calling to each other. They had found their prey. Rex took a step forward, standing tall, his body a shield between Noah and the encroaching danger. His growl deepened, a warning, a promise. But the coyotes were not afraid. They were hungry. Noah swallowed hard, his little fingers tightening. "Rex." The German shepherd did not waver. His amber eyes burned with focus. He had fought before. He had chased men through darkened streets, leaped into raging rivers to pull drowning victims to shore. He had felt the fire of a mission thrumming in his blood, and tonight, that fire burned hotter than ever. Because this wasn't just any rescue. This was his boy now. The coyotes crept closer, their glowing eyes appearing between the trees, their bodies barely visible in the thick brush. Noah could hear their panting, feel the weight of their presence pressing in from all sides. But Rex did not move. His muscles coiled like a spring, ready. Noah didn't know much about the wilderness, but he knew one thing for certain. Rex was ready to fight for him. The night was silent for a brief, breathless moment. Then, the first coyote lunged. Its body a blur of lean muscle and snapping teeth, aimed straight at Noah. But before it could reach him, Rex moved. The German shepherd sprang forward with the force of a trained warrior, his powerful jaws snapping shut around the coyote's shoulder mid-air. The impact sent both animals tumbling across the forest floor, a flurry of snarls, snapping jaws, and flashing fangs. Noah screamed, scrambling backward as the two beasts rolled dangerously close to him. Rex came out on top. He pinned the coyote beneath him, his teeth bared, a deep guttural growl vibrating through his chest. The coyote yelped and twisted violently, but Rex did not let go. He had faced threats before: criminals, wild animals, situations that tested every ounce of his training. But this was different. This was not just survival. This was protection. This was his boy. With one final vicious snarl, Rex released the coyote and snapped his teeth an inch from its throat. The message was clear: run or die. The coyote scrambled to its feet and bolted into the darkness, but the others had already moved in. Their eyes gleamed like fire in the shadows, their bodies circling with eerie patience. They weren't afraid. They were calculating. Noah's breath came in short, panicked gasps as he pressed his back against the gnarled roots of the tree, his little body shaking. "Rex," he whimpered. Rex backed toward him slowly, his body rigid, every muscle coiled, ready to strike again. His ears flattened as he assessed the pack. 4 coyotes, maybe 5. They weren't just hunting, they were strategizing. Noah. One of the coyotes, a larger one, likely the alpha, stepped forward. It let out a low, threatening growl, its yellowed teeth glinting in the sliver of moonlight filtering through the trees. Rex growled back, deeper, louder, a sound that rumbled through the earth beneath them. He was bigger, stronger, and he knew it. But the coyotes had numbers. A tense silence stretched between them. The coyotes paced in the undergrowth, weaving between the shadows, their tails flicking, their patience thinning. Then, 2 of them charged at once. Rex exploded into action. The first coyote lunged from the left, the second from the right, one aiming for Rex, the other for Noah. Rex twisted his body mid-leap, throwing himself toward the attacker going for the boy. His teeth found purchase in its side, a sharp yelp filling the air as he sank his fangs deep. But even as he fought, he felt the second coyote latch onto his hind leg. Pain shot through him. The coyote's jaws clamped down hard, trying to drag him down, but Rex would not fall. Fueled by instinct, he jerked away from the attacker at his back, his claws tearing into the dirt for leverage. He spun, snapping at the coyote still clinging to him, his teeth meeting fur and flesh. The moment it let go, he launched himself forward, knocking the animal off balance. Noah was screaming behind him, but Rex didn't have time to look. He could smell the fear radiating from the boy, but he had to stay in the fight. A sharp howl cut through the night. Rex's ears flicked toward the sound. One of the coyotes, wounded, limping into the darkness. Good. 1 down. But the others weren't retreating. They were relentless. The largest coyote, the alpha, growled low and deep, stepping forward once more. This time, it wasn't just testing Rex. It was challenging him. Rex stood his ground, his chest heaving, his muscles burning. His leg ached where the coyote had bitten him, warm blood trickling down into his paw, but he did not waver. The wind shifted. A new sound, a distant whistle, pierced the air. Rex's ears twitched. Ethan. The momentary distraction cost him. The alpha saw the hesitation and lunged. It was faster than the others, stronger, its body slamming into Rex with enough force to send him skidding across the ground. He barely had time to roll to his feet before the coyote was on him again, jaws snapping, teeth flashing. Noah's voice broke through the chaos. "Rex!" Rex snarled, his mind sharpening, his body ignoring the pain. He twisted, using the momentum to throw his full weight against the alpha. They crashed to the ground together, a tangled mess of fur and fury rolling across the earth. The alpha snapped at his throat, but Rex dodged, just barely. Then, with everything he had left, he went for the kill. His jaws closed around the alpha's snout, his fangs digging deep. The coyote yelped, thrashing wildly, but Rex held on. His muscles trembled, his body screamed for relief, but he did not let go. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the struggle stopped. The alpha whined, a sharp, defeated sound, and then it retreated. The others hesitated, watching as their leader turned and limped back into the darkness. The challenge had been lost. Rex had won. One by one, the remaining coyotes slunk away, disappearing into the shadows until the forest was silent once more. Noah's breath hitched. Did we? Rex didn't take his eyes off the trees until the last rustling faded into nothing. Only then did he turn back to the boy, panting, his legs shaking beneath him. Noah rushed forward, throwing his tiny arms around Rex's bloodied neck. "You saved me," he whispered into the thick fur. His small body trembled, his sobs muffled against the shepherd's side. Rex let out a heavy breath, leaning into him. But they weren't safe yet. The forest was still vast, the night still deep, and they had to find their way home. Then a voice, faint at first, but growing stronger. "Noah! Noah!" Noah gasped, his head snapping up. "Mom?" Another voice. This one rougher, older. "Ethan." Rex's ears perked up. Relief washed over him, though exhaustion tugged at his limbs. Noah scrambled to his feet, cupping his hands around his mouth. "I'm here!" A second later, there was movement. Footsteps. Running. Then, from the darkness, a figure burst into the clearing. His mother. Noah barely had time to react before she crashed to her knees, gathering him into a fierce, tearful embrace. "Oh, my baby. Noah. Oh my God, I thought I lost you." Her voice cracked with every word, her hands gripping him like she'd never let go. Ethan arrived next, his flashlight cutting through the night, his eyes landing immediately on Rex. The German shepherd swayed slightly on his feet, exhaustion finally taking hold. He could feel his wounds now, the dull throb in his leg, the ache in his ribs where the alpha had slammed into him. But when Ethan knelt before him, his rough hands running over Rex's fur, all the pain faded into something else. Pride. Ethan's voice was hoarse, thick with emotion. "You found him, boy." Rex let out a tired breath and nuzzled against his master's chest. The danger was over. Noah was safe. And as the wind rustled through the trees, carrying the last echoes of a battle won, Rex finally allowed himself to rest. The night was far from over. Though the danger had passed, the forest still stretched endlessly around them, cold and unyielding. Noah clung to his mother, his small body trembling from exhaustion, but his wide, teary eyes never left Rex. The German shepherd stood on unsteady legs, his sides heaving, his fur matted with blood, some his, some from the coyotes. The deep bite on his hind legs still bled, staining the earth beneath him. But Rex did not whimper, did not show weakness. He had protected his boy. He would keep protecting him until they were home. Ethan crouched beside him, running calloused hands over his companion's worn body. His sharp eyes took in every wound, his fingers ghosting over the deep bruises along Rex's ribs. He exhaled sharply, concern flickering across his weathered face. "You did good, boy," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. Rex's tail thumped once against the ground. Noah wiped at his eyes, sniffling. "Is he okay?" Ethan didn't answer right away. He glanced around the darkened woods, the flashlight in his free hand casting long, wavering shadows. The trees loomed, their branches whispering against the wind. He could feel the weight of the wilderness pressing in on them, an unspoken reminder that they were still lost. "We need to get moving," he said finally, rising to his feet. "We're too far from the main trail, and Rex needs medical attention." Noah pulled back from his mother, his face set with newfound determination. "I can walk," he said, his voice still shaky but resolute. He reached for Rex, wrapping his small arms carefully around the shepherd's thick neck. "Come on, buddy, let's go home." Rex nuzzled against him briefly before taking a step forward, his injured leg dragging slightly. He would not stop, not until his boy was safe. The forest was an endless labyrinth. Ethan led the way, his flashlight cutting through the darkness, the beam bouncing off damp tree trunks and tangled undergrowth. Every step was slow, careful, both for Noah's tired legs and Rex's growing limp. The boy tried to be strong, tried not to let his exhaustion slow them down. But the weight of the night, the fear, the hours of walking with no food or water, wore on him. His feet ached, his body heavy with fatigue. "Mom," he whispered after a while, his voice barely audible over the wind. "Are we gonna make it?" His mother squeezed his hand. "Of course we are, baby," she said, though her voice wavered just enough to betray her own fear. "Ethan knows the way." But Ethan wasn't sure. The storm clouds overhead had long since swallowed the stars, leaving them without landmarks. The undergrowth was thick, the paths twisting and unfamiliar. He had a rough sense of where they were, but rough wasn't good enough. They needed precision. They needed to find their way out. And then, as if the night hadn't thrown enough at them, it began to rain. At first, it was a drizzle, soft and cold against their skin. Then, within minutes, it turned into a relentless downpour. The flashlight flickered. Ethan cursed under his breath. If it died, they'd be left in utter darkness. Noah shivered violently as his clothes became soaked, his little frame barely able to withstand the cold. His mother wrapped her arms around him as they walked, trying to shield him as best she could. But the rain was merciless, and Rex, already weakened, already bleeding, was struggling. Ethan saw it in the way the shepherd's steps grew slower, in the way he fought to keep up, his breath coming in ragged pants. He was pushing himself beyond his limits. A sharp pain shot through Rex's leg with every step. His vision blurred slightly from exhaustion, his head heavy, but he did not stop. He could not. Then, a misstep. Rex's paw landed on a slick patch of mud, and suddenly, the ground gave way beneath him. The world tilted, the forest spun, and then he was falling. "No!" Noah's scream tore through the night as Rex tumbled down the embankment, disappearing into the darkness. Ethan lunged forward, barely catching himself before he too lost footing. He aimed the flashlight downward, but the rain made it impossible to see how far Rex had fallen. All they heard was the sound of him crashing through the underbrush before everything went silent. Noah sobbed. "We have to help him." He tried to rush forward, but his mother held him back. Ethan was already moving. "Stay here," he ordered. "Both of you." He carefully made his way down the embankment, slipping slightly as the mud sucked at his boots. His heart pounded in his chest as he scanned the darkness below. Then, finally, a shape. Rex lay at the bottom of the slope, his body half buried in wet leaves, his sides rising and falling in shallow breaths. He had not cried out, had not whimpered, but Ethan could see the pain in the way his limbs trembled, in the way he barely lifted his head when he saw his master approach. Ethan dropped to his knees beside him, his hands moving quickly over Rex's frame. More bruises, more cuts, but, thank God, no broken bones. "You stubborn son of a gun," Ethan muttered, relief washing over him. Rex exhaled, his tail twitching once. Above them, Noah's voice wavered. "Is he okay?" Ethan looked up. The embankment was steep, too dangerous for the boy to attempt climbing down. "He's alive," he called back, "but I need a way to get him up." Noah sniffled, rubbing his soaked sleeve against his nose. Then, determination flickered in his eyes. "Use my jacket," he said, already pulling it off. His mother blinked. "Honey, that won't—" "It's strong. It won't rip," Noah insisted. "Please, we have to get him back." Ethan stared up at the boy for a moment before nodding. "Tie the sleeves together. Make it as tight as you can." Noah's small hands fumbled as he tied the knots, but he worked quickly. When he was done, he threw the makeshift rope down. Ethan grabbed hold, wrapping part of it around Rex's body, careful not to touch his wounds. "All right, Noah, hold tight. You're going to help me pull him up." Noah braced himself, gripping the jacket as hard as his little fingers could. His mother wrapped her arms around his waist, adding her strength. Ethan heaved. Rex did not resist. He trusted. Together they pulled. It took every ounce of strength, every last bit of determination. Noah's arms burned, his body shaking from effort, but he didn't let go. He would not let go. And then, finally, Rex's front paws scraped against solid ground. With one final heave, Ethan pushed him upward, and Noah and his mother dragged him over the edge. They collapsed in a heap, rain soaking them all, breaths ragged, hearts pounding. Noah's hands immediately went to Rex's face. "You're okay," he sobbed, running his fingers through the shepherd's wet fur. "You're okay." Rex, despite the pain, despite everything, licked the boy's cheek. A promise. Ethan exhaled, pushing himself to his feet. "We need to move," he said. "Now." The rain had not slowed. If anything, it had worsened. The ground was turning to sludge beneath their feet, but up ahead, just beyond the trees, a light. Ethan's pulse quickened. "We're close," he breathed. With renewed energy, they pushed forward. Rex, though weak, forced himself to stand. And together, They walked toward home. The storm had turned vicious. Rain lashed against the trees in thick sheets, drumming against the soaked earth, turning everything to mud. Wind howled through the branches, bending them under its force, creating a haunting symphony of rustling leaves and snapping twigs. The world was drowning in darkness, save for the weak glow of the cabin's porch light flickering through the storm. Ethan tightened his grip on the flashlight, his body stiff with exhaustion, but he forced himself forward. The weight of the night pressed down on them, but they were so close, so agonizingly close. The old wooden fence that surrounded the cabin was just ahead, barely visible through the thick curtain of rain. "We're almost there," Ethan called over the wind. His voice was hoarse, drained from the night's ordeal. "Stay with me, Noah." Noah was shaking, his little legs unsteady, but he kept moving. His mother held onto him tightly, shielding him from the worst of the wind, her arms wrapped protectively around his small frame. But his eyes never left Rex. The shepherd was struggling now. Every step was a battle. His hind leg, wounded and dragging, left streaks of red in the mud. His breaths came in short, ragged pants. But he did not stop. He couldn't stop, not until his boy was safe. Then, through the roar of the storm, a sound that turned their blood to ice. A growl, deep, low, threatening. Ethan stopped dead in his tracks. His flashlight flicked toward the source of the sound. The coyotes were back. 3 of them this time, their lean, rain-slicked bodies moving like shadows through the underbrush. Their eyes glowed, their ears flattened against their heads. They had been waiting, stalking their every move, watching from the darkness. Noah whimpered, clutching at his mother. "No," he whispered. Ethan felt his heart slam against his ribs. He reached for the knife strapped to his belt. It wasn't enough. 3 against 1 wasn't a fight. It was a slaughter. And then, Rex stepped forward. Even with his battered body, his trembling legs, his open wounds, the German shepherd placed himself between the boy and the predators. His head was low, his lips curled back, exposing sharp teeth in a silent snarl. The coyotes hesitated, but they did not back down. The largest of the 3, a coyote bigger than the others, its ribs protruding from its thin frame, took a step forward. Rex didn't flinch. He didn't waver. Instead, he let out the deepest, most primal snarl Ethan had ever heard. It was a sound of warning, a sound of war. The lead coyote flicked its tail, considering. It knew Rex was injured, weak, but it also knew he had fought before, and it had lost. A long moment stretched between them, tense and breathless. Then, as if making a silent decision, the coyote lunged, and Rex met it head-on. The 2 animals collided with a sickening crunch, rolling into the mud in a flurry of snapping jaws and flashing fangs. Rex clamped down on the coyote's muzzle, his teeth sinking deep, and shook with all the strength he had left. The coyote yelped, trying to twist free, but Rex held firm. The second coyote moved in, its teeth flashing toward Rex's side. Ethan didn't think. He acted. His knife swung through the rain, slicing through fur and flesh. The second coyote let out a strangled yelp and staggered back, its shoulder bleeding. The third coyote hesitated now, its confidence wavering. Rex did not stop. Despite his exhaustion, despite the pain ravaging his body, he threw the first coyote off of him and lunged again. His teeth found purchase on its throat, a split second before the beast could react. Noah was crying now, pleading. "Rex, stop. Please, buddy." For a moment the shepherd didn't hear him. His body was all instinct, all survival. Then, his ears flicked toward the boy's voice. Noah sobbed again. "Please." And just like that, Rex let go. The first coyote scrambled away, gasping, blood staining its fur. It didn't look back. It turned and fled. The second, already injured, followed without hesitation. The third, the last one, stared at Rex for a long moment before slinking away, its yellowed eyes flickering with something like fear. Then, just like that, they were gone. The forest was silent once more, save for the storm raging around them. Ethan let out a shaky breath, lowering his knife. His hands were shaking. His pulse pounded in his ears. Noah didn't hesitate. He ran to Rex, throwing his arms around the shepherd's bloodied neck. "You saved us," he sobbed into the fur. "You saved me." Rex swayed slightly on his feet, but his tail gave the weakest wag. Ethan stepped forward, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he knelt beside the dog and pressed his forehead gently against Rex's. His voice was rough, thick with emotion. "You did good, boy," he whispered. "You did real good." Rex let out a tired breath and collapsed. Noah screamed. Ethan caught the shepherd before he hit the ground completely, his hands cradling Rex's heavy head. "He's exhausted," Ethan said quickly, checking his pulse, his breathing. "He's alive, but we need to get him inside." Noah wiped at his tear-streaked face. "We have to help him." Ethan didn't hesitate. He lifted Rex into his arms, ignoring the sharp pain in his muscles, the weight of exhaustion dragging him down. He didn't care. "Let's get him home." The warmth of the cabin was overwhelming after the cold of the storm. Ethan laid Rex down near the fireplace, moving with the practiced precision of a man who had done this before. His hands worked quickly, cleaning wounds, stopping the bleeding. Noah hovered beside him, his small hands clutching a dry towel, his face etched with worry. "Is he gonna be okay?" The boy's voice was small, fragile. Ethan met his gaze. "He's strong." Rex let out a low, tired whimper. Noah was on him instantly, stroking his fur, whispering words of comfort. "You're home now," he murmured. "You're safe." The shepherd's tail twitched. Ethan sat back, his arms resting on his knees. His eyes flickered between Rex and Noah, his chest tightening. This dog, this boy, they had saved each other. Noah's mother knelt beside her son, wrapping an arm around him. She leaned in, her lips brushing against his damp hair. "You were so brave," she whispered. "Just like Rex." Noah sniffled. "Because he's my best friend." Ethan swallowed hard. He reached out, running a hand down Rex's back, feeling the rise and fall of his breath. "Yeah," he murmured. "He's the best damn dog I've ever known." Outside, the storm raged on, but inside the cabin, there was only warmth. There was only home. He storm raged on outside, the wind howling through the trees, rain hammering against the cabin's roof like a relentless drum. But inside, within the flickering glow of the fireplace, there was only warmth. Rex lay curled on the thick blanket, his breathing slow but steady. His wounds had been cleaned, his fur dried, and the chill of the storm had been replaced by the soft heat of the fire. The exhaustion in his bones was heavy, but he was home. He could feel it. Noah had refused to leave his side. The little boy sat beside him, his small hands buried in the thick fur, his cheek resting against Rex's back. His eyes were puffy from crying, but there was relief in them now. Rex had made it. They both had. Ethan sat nearby, arms crossed over his chest, watching the shepherd closely. His rough hands rested on his knees, his mind replaying the events of the night over and over again. He had seen bravery before, but what he had witnessed tonight, it was something else entirely. He had seen dogs defend, seen them track, seen them fight. But never had he seen a dog give everything the way Rex had. The shepherd had risked his life without hesitation. For one boy. For his boy. Noah's mother knelt beside her son, running gentle fingers through his damp hair. Her heart still thundered in her chest, her mind struggling to comprehend how close she had come to losing him. She swallowed hard, her gaze shifting toward Ethan. "I don't even know how to thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You, Rex, if it wasn't for you both." Ethan shook his head. "It was Rex," he said simply. His voice was gruff, but there was something softer in it now. "I just got there in time." She turned back to the dog, her eyes welling up again. He saved my son. Noah, his fingers still tangled in Rex's fur, lifted his head. He's my best friend, he whispered. The words settled in Ethan's chest like a weight he didn't know he had been carrying. He had trained Rex, raised him, fought alongside him. But this bond between the dog and the boy, this was different. This was love. The morning after. When dawn broke, it brought with it a new world. The storm had passed, leaving the forest glistening with early morning light. The trees dripped with rain, the scent of damp earth thick in the air. The sky, once filled with fury, was now a soft shade of gold, the clouds breaking apart to reveal the sun. Inside the cabin, Noah stirred, his small body still curled up next to Rex. His mother had covered them both with a thick quilt during the night, watching over them even as exhaustion pulled her into restless sleep. Rex, though still weak, was awake. His ears twitched at the sound of birds outside, his nose twitching at the familiar scent of pine and fresh air. But more than anything, he felt the warmth of the little boy beside him. Noah's tiny hand rested on his side, his breathing slow and steady. Rex let out a low, contented sigh. He was where he belonged. When Noah finally blinked awake, his first instinct was panic. He sat up so fast that the blanket slipped off his shoulders, his hands immediately reaching for the shepherd. "Rex?" The dog huffed softly, lifting his head just enough to nuzzle into the boy's hand. Noah let out a gasp of pure relief. "You're okay!" Rex let his tail wag, just barely, but it was enough to send Noah into a fit of giggles. "You scared me," he said, rubbing behind Rex's ears, "but you're still the bravest dog ever." Ethan, leaning against the doorway, chuckled. "Yeah, I'd say so." Noah turned toward him, his big eyes filled with something deeper than gratitude. "Mr. Ethan," he said softly, "can I ask you something?" Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Shoot." The boy swallowed, looking down at Rex. Can Rex stay with me?" His voice was small, hesitant, but full of hope. "Like, forever?" His mother let out a soft breath, her gaze flickering to Ethan, unsure of what to say. Ethan, for once, was at a loss for words. He looked at Rex, the dog who had been his partner, his protector, his most loyal companion. A dog who had fought for him time and time again. A dog who had saved lives, who had been everything. But now, he belonged to someone else. Rex had made his choice. He had found his boy. Ethan exhaled through his nose, rubbing the back of his neck. "Well," he said finally, his voice rough. "Looks to me like Rex already made up his mind." Noah lit up. "Really?" He turned back to Rex, his hands framing the shepherd's face, his excitement barely contained. "Did you hear that, buddy? You get to stay." Rex let out a deep, happy woof, his tail thumping against the floor. Noah laughed, burying his face into the dog's fur. "You're my best friend, Rex, forever." Ethan crossed his arms over his chest, watching the scene unfold. There was a tightness in his throat that he wasn't prepared for, an ache he hadn't expected. Rex had been his for so long. But this was right. Rex hadn't just found Noah. He had found home. The goodbye. That wasn't a goodbye. Later that morning, as the sun rose higher, Ethan stood on the cabin's porch, watching as Noah and his mother prepared to leave. Rex sat beside the boy, never straying more than a few inches away. Ethan knew that the shepherd's body was still healing, that he needed rest, but there was no mistaking the energy in his eyes now. He had something to protect. Noah's mother walked up to Ethan, her expression filled with emotion. "I don't know how I can ever repay you," she said softly. "For what you did, for what Rex did." Ethan shook his head. "You don't have to." She hesitated. "Are you sure about this? Letting him go?" Ethan looked at the boy, at the way Noah beamed every time Rex looked at him. "Yeah," he murmured. "I'm sure." Noah ran up to Ethan then, his small hands wrapping around the man's waist in a sudden hug. "Thank you," he said into Ethan's shirt. Ethan, surprised, ruffled the boy's hair. "Take good care of him, all right?" Noah pulled back, nodding furiously. "I will." Then, he turned back to Rex, patting his side. "Come on, buddy, let's go home." Rex didn't hesitate. He followed his boy, and as Ethan watched them walk away, Noah's small hand gripping the fur at Rex's neck, the shepherd trotting beside him with unwavering devotion, he felt something settle deep in his chest. It wasn't loss, it wasn't sadness, it was peace. Because he knew, without a doubt, that Rex was exactly where he was meant to be, and he always would be. Forever. As the car disappeared down the winding dirt road, Ethan stood on the cabin's porch, watching until the last flicker of Noah and Rex was gone from sight. The forest around him was still now, the storm from the night before, leaving only damp leaves and the lingering scent of rain. The sky was clear, the golden sunlight filtering through the trees, casting long shadows over the earth. And yet, despite the silence, despite the emptiness of the space Rex had once filled beside him, Ethan smiled. He turned his gaze toward the old wooden fence where Rex had once waited for him at the end of every long day. There would be no more of that. No more eager paws scratching at the door, no more warm presence curled at his feet as he sat on the porch at dusk. But this was how it was meant to be. For years, Ethan and Rex had been a team. A partnership built on trust, on the shared instinct to protect, to serve, to rescue. And they had done exactly that. Again and again. But Rex had given everything. And in the end, he had found something greater than the next mission, the next search and rescue call. He had found family. Ethan exhaled, rubbing a hand over his scruffy beard before turning back inside. He paused by the fireplace, where Rex had lain the night before, curled up beside Noah, his body weak but his spirit unbroken. Even now, Ethan could almost hear the soft, sleepy murmurs of the boy whispering to the shepherd, promising him they would always be together. And he knew. Rex had chosen his home. A deep warmth spread through Ethan's chest. Not loss, not sadness, but peace and pride. The kind of pride that came from knowing that a life had been saved. Not just Noah's, but Rex's too. A bond like that didn't break. No matter where they were, Rex would always be his dog. And Ethan would always be grateful. A few months later, the world had moved on, but some things never changed. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting amber streaks across the sky, Ethan sat on his porch, a warm mug of coffee in his hands. It had been quiet without Rex, different, but not lonely, because Rex had left behind something greater than silence, a legacy. Then, a sound in the distance, a car rolling up the dirt road, tires crunching against the gravel. Ethan set his coffee down, squinting against the fading light, and then he saw them. Noah. And right beside him, Rex. The shepherd spotted Ethan instantly, his ears perking, his body still strong despite the battle scars he carried. His tail wagged once, then he ran, straight toward Ethan. The man barely had time to brace himself before Rex leaped onto the porch, tail wagging wildly, his body pressing into Ethan's legs, whining in pure excitement. Ethan let out a gruff laugh, kneeling down and wrapping his arms around the dog. "You missed me, huh?" Rex huffed against him. And just like that, it was like no time had passed at all. Noah grinned as he climbed out of the car, running up the steps. "I told you he wanted to visit." Ethan ruffled the boy's hair. "Well, you weren't wrong." Noah beamed. "Mom said we could come visit all the time, and Rex still remembers everything. You should see how fast he runs now." Ethan chuckled. "Yeah? Still the fastest dog around?" Noah nodded furiously. The best dog. Rex sat proudly between them, ears up, tail wagging, eyes full of life. Ethan ran a hand down the shepherd's back, feeling the warmth, the strength beneath his fingers. Yeah, Rex was exactly where he belonged. And no matter what happened, no matter where life took them, they would always find their way back to each other. Because love, loyalty, and bravery like that never fade. It only grows stronger. And final words to the audience. If you were moved by Rex's loyalty, his bravery, and the unbreakable bond he formed with Noah, don't forget to share this story. Because there are real-life heroes just like Rex. Dogs who risk everything, who love without limits, who protect the ones they call family. If you've ever had a dog who changed your life, tell us in the comments. And if this story touched your heart, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another incredible story. Because sometimes the best heroes don't wear capes. They walk on four paws, and they will love you forever.